So what does pivoting mean for us? I want to lift up some language for consideration that your church teams and denominations are going to have to continue to work out. As we look at the movement taking place, because there is movement and mobility, religiously or otherwise, we have to pivot from being sacredly still to being sacredly mobile. Sacredly still or stationary to be sacredly mobile. What does it mean to go and make disciples? What does that look like? So really quickly, and again, these are going to be some follow pieces. Final closing piece. Making disciples, the Jesus mission, moving from localization to globalization. And here my use of the word globalization is not just a reference to region in terms of global world, Nigeria, Jamaica, Mexico. You're already doing that. And this denomination does a fabulous job of expanding reach beyond local borders. But what I'm talking about is becoming global in our thinking and in our strategies, not just in terms of, again, a region, but in our thinking. So let me lift up 3 categories for consideration, and then we're going to close. Category 1. As I listened to each generation responding to each of the languages, to each of the questions, I heard different language and grammar being used, right? And here I'm going to lift up a metaphorical passage or motif. When people talk about the Holy Spirit being poured out on the day of Pentecost, we talk about each person hearing it in their tongue, right? I want to suggest that we have a language issue. That in as much as we're trying to communicate the faith and pass it on, we are not grasping the grammar of new generations, and the data says they are not grasping our grammar. They do not understand foundational principles and words that we talked about, what salvation means, redemption means, communion means. If you ask young people from Gen Z and even millennials, I would say to explain what those terms mean. Why do we have Lent? Why do we do this? Can't always communicate it. And they are also saying, we don't hear you speaking in our tongue. I heard my dear sister in the back lift up that our grammar is music. Our grammar is music. It is essentially the reason why I've focused my entire doctoral project on music. Because I recognize my doctoral mentor said, go out and discern and listen. I said, I can't find focus. I don't know what's going on. I'm not engaged. And I sat down on Friday nights in our youth group before the formal meeting began, and I watched what young people were talking about. Everything was about music and music artists. And so my entire work has been focused on how we use music to do faith formation, and not just the spiritual music, but the music with which they are engaged. Language, sacred mobility. Second category, thinking. How we think about youth ministry is often through the lens of our generational positionality. We are making assumptions that the people that we are preaching to, creating all these fancy programs for, begin with the same set of assumptions that we began with. Can I give you some news? Not everybody who comes to church always believes that Jesus is Lord. Not everybody believes of the need for salvation by grace that comes through faith. Not everybody believes that church is an essential part of one's life. For most in Gen Z, right, church is a menu option, akin to basketball practice, SAT classes, to the other events. It certainly isn't mandatory because the data says their parents have done less to ensure that this is a thing. So when you are trying to disciple somebody who is all about just being attracted or being interested, you are starting at a level that they are not even on yet in terms of the fundamental assumptions. So sometimes we're trying to do spiritual formation and people aren't even in the box. They aren't even in the box. And so what we are trying to do is not hidden because they're not even there yet. And so how do you go back to where they are and start even at a base relational level? Did you hear what they said? We're into relationships. There is no scaling of the fish if you can't even engage me in a relationship. It is introducing young people into a relationship by forging relationship with them. So sometimes we're going for the big level and they're not even there. It's like inviting somebody to advanced calculus and they're in basic addition and subtraction. What level are you aiming for? Final piece. Program design. I asked each of you, what programs had the most formative experience on your life? I wanted to amplify the voices of Gen Z because they are telling you, right? What is at minimum engaging for them? It doesn't suggest that the things that we know worked for us don't have value, because it's not just about what they want. There's a way to be collaborative. But I am saying that youth ministry needs a tremendous facelift. If all of our programs are aiming at discipleship level, we know that's the entire goal. But most of our young people fall into the category of just crowd members or attracted, or at very least they're interested. It is hit or miss. And how do we begin to reimagine programs that position us from being so insular and doing the same things year in and year out that are not tapping in beyond the four walls of the church to the spaces in which the students are? If they are not here, where are young people showing up? When they're not here on a Sunday, they say they don't want to come into the sanctuary, and we find them on Instagram, and they're at all these social events. They're still gathering. They're still doing quantity, just not here. So how do we begin to launch into the deep in a way that steps beyond what we've always done to say, let me take a deeper dive into your world? We'll continue the conversation, but I just want to end it there so that you can begin to think about how you might begin to reimagine some of the paradigms that we're using. Pastor Ken, I'll let you come so that we can transition to the next.